radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 9, recorded on Wednesday, October 14th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we'll be talking about where we stand with the upcoming presidential election and congressional elections. There's only 20 days left, so let's get to it. But first, the headlines.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake, disgusting news.
Up first in headlines. This already seems way too old. We had the VP debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence, with a special guest appearance by a housefly.
Yeah, that's all anybody wants to talk about.
That's it.
The fly that landed on Pence's head and refused to leave.
Did you watch the debate?
I did. It was basically an hour and a half of Kamala Harris trying to speak and the moderator saying, "Please, Mr. Vice President."
Over
Mr.
and
Vice
over
President.
and over again.
Just constantly. And they did, I don't know if you saw, one interesting statistic from this is that their actual speaking time was relatively even.
Okay.
And that's 100% because near the end of the debate, I noticed this, I commented to my wife at the time, Kamala Harris was getting way more than 2 minutes. I think the moderator was just really upset with Pence and just decided to let Harris talk until she was done and not say anything and not keep track of her time. And it ended up being almost exactly even at the end because of that.
Well, I think a lot of that, too, is also because towards the end, Kamala just started demanding more time. Just straight up like, no, I need more time to talk about this. Or no, I need to defend against whatever he just said. And I think that's where she got a lot of that time back as well.
Yeah. And Pence didn't really answer any of her questions anyway.
No.
He would always say, well, that's a great question, but actually I want to talk about this.
Right.
Like, okay, well, then why are we even here?
Well, and I don't know, with Kamala Harris and Mike Pence, I thought it was both disregarding a lot of the questions and kind of just doing their own thing anyway. It was just kind of a basic platform for them to both get their talking points across, regardless of how you felt about it.
Yeah, they both refused to answer any tough questions.
Let me tell you a story about Abraham Lincoln. I do have to say my favorite part of the entire debate, though, was when Kamala just looked straight deadpan into the camera and just said, there was a time when this country used to believe in science. And then just a long pause as she stares at Mike Pence for a good 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Just so awkward.
And they need to hammer them.
That was
way
great.
More on
I loved it.
Yeah, they keep disregarding any guidelines from the CDC, from the World Health Organization. They cut the funding for the World Health Organization.
But Jason, swine flu, bro.
Yeah,
Swine
they
flu.
keep going with that.
Why?
Oh, if this was as bad as your handling of swine flu, there'd be 2 million people dead.
Right.
Shaming them for something that didn't happen.
Which is so weird. Like, well, you guys would have done as bad of a job as we did.
If
That's
this
so
was the
bizarre.
bubonic plague, 15 million people would have died. Like, what? What are you talking about?
Well, then it even goes back to what Trump was doing in the first debate, where he was saying, if you were in charge, way more people would have died under you. Great.
Yeah.
What point are you making right now?
Cool story, bro.
Right. How do you think this is actually going to affect anything? Do you think it'll affect anything?
No, and I definitely think the coverage that the fly is getting is indicative of how much people really cared about what either person said.
I completely agree. I was actually talking about this exact same question with some of my friends as well, where we were
Wait, you have other friends?
It's hard to believe, I know. Where we were discussing whether or not this was Kamala's or Pence's debate to win here. And I don't really think you can say one person really won the debate over the other. I think it was kind of useless overall. But I think this was overall Pence's debate that he had to win, right? Where you have someone who's trailing pretty far behind nationwide, given a platform of millions of people. This is your chance to really catch up and show everyone what you're all about. And the fact that the only thing everyone remembers from this debate is a fly landed on Mike Pence's head and stayed there for a very long time is pretty much everything you need to know that Mike Pence screwed up his chance.
I do think, if you're being very generous. You could say that he did better as far as getting his talking points out and kind of being on the attack a little bit more than she was. But if you're Kamala Harris, and I really do wish she could go after him, and I said that last week that I'd like to see her do it because I think she's pretty good at that.
Right.
She's shown in Congress that she's good at that, but I feel like they're really just trying to not make her the angry black woman. That's been said a million times by everybody. And you still saw on Fox News that's exactly what they called her after the debate anyway, even though she was trying to be as calm as possible and not get into a fight, not say anything really controversial, but still just try to get her talking points across. She had to fail spectacularly for them to make up ground, which is what they need. And she didn't do that, and they didn't make up any ground. So that's, I think, what they're going for on the Biden-Harris side, and they succeeded.
You could easily tell that was Kamala's strategy. Make this debate as boring as possible. Don't get any clips that they can use, or don't make any clips that the other side can use, and just let this kind of fall into the background noise of all the chaos that's going on in 2020. That was it. And Kamala did her job, even though I completely agree that I would have loved to see her do more attacking, but she didn't do it because she didn't want to take the risk.
Yep.
By and large, the debate was overall pretty forgettable. Nothing really crazy happened. Pence lied a lot, and Kamala tried her best to handle that. At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to make any change.
Nope. Have you been watching the Judiciary Committee hearings?
A little bit. Nothing too crazy, because we know what's going to happen. And for what I have been watching, Amy's not doing anything to stir a controversy.
She is playing as we were just talking about, the Kamala Harris role of, I'm not going to answer any tough questions. I'm not going to say anything that's going to make the news. I'm just going to sit here and wait for them to make me a Supreme Court justice, because she knows that's inevitable as long as she keeps her mouth shut.
And you really see Democrats not falling for the Republicans' tactics here, where Republicans want Democrats to really turn this into some kind of circus like they did with the Kavanaugh one.
They want it to be about the fact that she's extreme Catholic.
I mean, and you can see that in some Trump ads too, where they're trying to push for Amy Coney Barrett, which is just a really weird political ad right now. They'll even say super conservative Christian, needs to go onto the bench. You can tell that's exactly where they want people to focus on. But Democrats aren't letting them have that. They're just sticking to the points of, we have the ACA. Are you going to attack the ACA? You've written about how the ACA is unconstitutional. What are you going to do about the ACA? And what are you going to do about Roe? I think if they just stick to that, it'll be fine. Amy's going to get confirmed. We already know that's going to happen.
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago when we first talked about this opening, and saying that this is the risk the Republicans run in trying to do this confirmation right before an election in which they're likely going to lose control of the Senate. This can be a spur for voters. This is what the Republicans are doing right now. They're not voting on getting you any more relief from COVID. They're not working on helping you in any way. They're trying to ram this Supreme Court nomination through so that they can take away your health care and take away same-sex marriage and take away abortion rights. That's what they care about. That's what they're doing in the middle of this pandemic. They're doing this at record quick pace while also not doing anything else, while a bill from the House that passed the Democrat-led House has been sitting since May that the Republicans refused to even bring up for a vote.
Yep. But the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation will keep going. Like I said, I don't think it's anything we really need to be focused on too much, but just be aware that she is going to get confirmed.
That's okay. When she's one of 37 justices, it won't be so bad.
Up next, the New England Journal of Medicine blasts the United States leadership with handling the coronavirus. And another respectable journal, or a science journal, has to speak out against this insane administration for killing over 200,000 Americans.
I just saw in Trump's rally and his speeches, though, he said he's doing a great job. He saved 2 million people's lives. How can a medical journal come out against him and say he's doing a bad job?
Which is hilarious, because those same people also said that the scientists were wrong based on their projections at the time. Do you remember that? where they're saying, well, the scientists kept saying that almost 2 million people were going to die from COVID if we didn't do anything. So how can we trust them now?
Yeah, and it's not saying that it's the government that saved 2 million people. It's the people themselves that stayed home, that wore masks, that did the things that the government was telling us not to do, because they keep telling us that we need to go out and, fix the economy by going out in bars and restaurants and not take any precautions. Then you would have had 2 million deaths. If we did literally nothing from the start and everyone went out and lived their lives like normal and didn't stay home, then yeah, we probably would have been looking like it would have completely wiped out our elderly population, more than likely. But instead, we're not lunatics, so we didn't do that. And some states actually were responsible and had, stay-at-home mandates until a terrible legislature overturned that order. And we protected ourselves, but we didn't get any protection and any leadership from the government.
Well, let's talk about what the New England Journal of Medicine actually said about this in their editorial. And I quote, "When it comes to the response to the largest public health crisis of our time, our current political leaders have demonstrated that they are dangerously incompetent. We should not abet them and enable the deaths of thousands more Americans by allowing them to keep their jobs."
Yes, they're saying
that is
vote.
a strong freaking statement.
Yeah, vote them out.
Right.
Send them home.
Like, that is the closest thing you can say to, like, you better freaking vote for Biden.
Right.
Without
Biden
actually mentioning him.
2020.
Right. But I mean, this also goes to another study that we were talking about before that unfortunately we got lost in all the other news from last week, was that there was a Cornell study that says Trump is the biggest driver of coronavirus misinformation as of right now.
Yeah, and it's not stopping. If only,
No.
It's gotten worse. He says he's immune. There's no evidence that you can be immune, even if you have antibodies. But he's claiming that because he had it and is now testing negative, that means he's immune now. And he was saying he's going to kiss everybody. He is trying to troll everyone. Like, is that what you want as your president? You want your 15-year-old stupid cousin who never leaves his computer that, is constantly posting all over the place. That's how you want your president to act. And it's dangerous because he's literally telling people, yeah, it's fine. I had the coronavirus. I might still be contagious. It's been less than 2 weeks, remember?
But who cares?
Yeah, whatever. Come on, give me a hug. It's fine. You'll feel better than you have in 20 years.
And remember, this is in addition to the fact that he's been pushing like pseudoscience and miracle cures like hydroxychloroquine and was it oleandrin and all the other stuff, when we were actually trying to find the actual process or the actual medications that will help people with coronavirus right now.
I thought we just inject light and bleach and then that would be fine. It just kills it.
Right.
Did you hear any of those Fox interviews that he did right after coming out of the hospital?
Well, yes. Yes, I did.
It was good when he was trying to cough through a sentence on Hannity.
Oh my God.
Saying that, he beat coronavirus and he could barely talk.
Well, because, the one thing you want your president to do to make sure that he is stable and understanding and able to handle this job is to immediately go on a roided up circuit where he's absolutely delusional and just completely like trash everything Republicans were trying to stand for during the last debate. So you have Mike Pence, who was trying to get congratulated during his VP debate because he was doing so much better at debating than Trump was, which, by the way, is a completely bullshit point. I'm so sick of, and they did the same thing in 2016 as well, where Trump set the bar so low that any lackluster performance by Pence is considered a great job.
And then he even tanked what little success they had by then going out and saying that he was going to end negotiations on a COVID relief bill with Democrats.
Right. Well, and even then, the day after a VP debate, he goes on to Fox Business and calls Kamala a monster.
Yeah, that's the thing. She was trying so hard to just be calm and be civil and not cause any controversy. But then they're still like, oh, what an angry black woman. She's terrible. Yeah, you're not just racist. That's for sure.
And I was just going to say that too. Let's be real here. The reason why Trump goes after women of color like this is because of his racism. You don't see him doing this type of stuff with other people. You don't see him calling white men dogs and monsters. This is 100% due to his sexism, misogyny, and racism.
And outright stupidity.
You're right, that too. And then even more so, all the chaos that's going on with the second debate, which never happened because Trump wussed out.
Yeah, he didn't want a virtual. He's literally still sick with and contagious from the coronavirus. They're trying to accommodate that and say, well, obviously we're not going to have an in-person debate because you're a plague carrier, so we'll do a virtual debate. And his response to that was, "Oh, that's not how you do debates. It's got to be in person. I don't have time for a virtual debate. That's crazy." So Biden then scheduled a different event. So it's supposed to be the town hall debate, which
Yes.
we saw how well he did in the town hall with the military families, was that?
Oh, yes.
So I'm sure he wasn't looking forward to that one to begin with. And as soon as Biden scheduled other arrangements, I think he's going to go on ABC that day and do a town hall just by himself. Then Trump was like, well, wait, maybe we should just reschedule it instead. Well, now it's too late. You know it's too late. You know it's not going to happen. And you're just trying to make yourself look better that you didn't just cancel the debate basically on your own.
Exactly. And that's kind of basically what happened, right? Where you had the two campaigns playing ping pong back and forth. And at the end of it, Biden's campaign said, you know what? We'll do a debate. It just has to be virtual because I am not going into a literal physical building with you, which is good. I'm glad he did that because there is no reason why Biden needs to do any more debates with this guy. None. So the fact that he was even offering to do a debate at all with him was a gift to Trump. And Trump still cried like a little baby and turned it down.
They should do it like prison style, where they're on the phone in front of a plexiglass thing talking to each other, and then we just record it. Trump has to dress in orange, match his complexion.
So as of right now, the last debate, or the third debate, which would take place on October 22nd, is the next scheduled debate. The format is still technically up in the air, but most likely it'll be a town hall style debate like the second one was supposed to be, where they'll be both taking questions from voters themselves.
And finally, to close out headlines,
Well, from what all the other news we picked from,
we had a story out of Michigan where there was a quote-unquote militia plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer and hold her for trial in a secure location in Wisconsin. They weren't going to use my basement, I'll tell you that. I'm assuming just somewhere in rural northern Wisconsin was their plan.
So let's break this down. There was a group of idiots who wanted to take out Whitmer to get their state back, potentially, I don't know, liberate Michigan, quoting a certain president. They teamed up with another right-wing militia group called the Wolverine Watchmen, where they eventually got their plan together and then was immediately foiled in stupendous fashion by the FBI.
Or by Donald Trump personally, if you ask him.
But he hates the FBI.
When it suits him.
Point taken.
Because according to Trump, Whitmer was very ungracious to him. She should have thanked him personally for doing this. Because he did it. He stopped this terror plot. This, again, domestic terror plot by right-wing Christian extremists, the real terrorists in the United States.
And you don't hear Republicans talking about that, do you?
Somebody needs to do something about Antifa. I saw a Michigan sheriff that was recently involved in an event by some of these people that was on stage with some of the people involved with this, defending them and saying, well, we don't know. They've only been charged with this. And do we really think it's a kidnapping? You know, they're just trying to make a citizen's arrest maybe because they don't agree with her. It was the most dog-whistly, horrible, right-wing garbage by an elected official. Again, domestic terrorism. That's what this is. These are, again, you look at any statistic about violence in this country and violence perpetrated upon the American people, it is by leaps and bounds right-wing Christian extremists. Those are the people that are killing people here in a greater number than any other group. And it never gets covered. It's always like, oh, he was, a lone wolf. Oh, he's quiet, kept to himself. They never talk about their...
That's when they want to talk about mental health.
Yeah, they never talk about the fact, what are their motivations? What groups do they belong to? What's the bigger picture with them? No, it's always, let's just focus on the person. But anytime it's somebody who is a member of any kind of left-wing group, or certainly if they're from another country, then...
The entire group is tainted.
Right, and that's the reason why they did it.
So the alleged plan to kidnap the governor had several different details, including purchasing a taser and spending around $4,000 for explosives to blow up the bridge to Whitmer's vacation home. And that's where they eventually would attack Whitmer and take her to Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's a very complicated plan. I think they
Foolproof. It was foolproof.
I think they also were getting ready to fight the police. They want to kill police because, again, there are right-wing anarchists as well, and they're generally violent.
So this was happening since the summer months, and the FBI was already on it from the get-go because these guys were about as sneaky as a 2-ton giant walking through a city. The agency said it collected information about the kidnapping plot from informants and undercover agents. Over the summer, the conspirators allegedly began training for a potential attack on Whitmer's vacation home or the governor's official summer residence.
Yeah, I imagine about half of the people in these crazy right-wing militia are probably police officers. Some of them are even undercover.
These guys are so stupid. But I want to focus on the real issue here. This is what happens when you have a president who is spewing garbage constantly, like liberate Michigan, liberate Pennsylvania, and egging these types of people on.
Stand back and stand by.
Stand back and stand by is another great example of this. That's the real danger here. And I'm so sick of Republicans not being aware of or acknowledging it.
According to NPR, they are going to be facing 19 state felony charges that range from gang membership and providing material support for terrorist acts to charges of carrying a firearm during the commission of a felony.
And that's on top of their 6 federal charges as well.
Left wing, we're going left wing all the way.
So with the election only 20 days away, there's a lot of tension about where we stand right now and what do we look forward to in the upcoming couple of weeks. How is this election looking right now? What are the congressional elections looking like? And what are some of the key swing states to look for? When you look at national polls right now, or at least the national polling average, Biden is currently ahead 10.5 percentage points over Trump. That's pretty freaking good.
Yeah, especially to be above an incumbent like that.
Correct. And the good news is that margin has been widening since October, basically right after the first presidential debate.
Yeah, apparently getting COVID was not good for Trump's campaign.
For the month of September, it was actually pretty straight and consistent. And then we look at the end of September, which is when the first debate took place, and when Trump got COVID, you actually start to see a widening of the margins from 7% to 10.5%. That's very good news. However, we just can't trust national polls alone. We also have to understand that national polls don't mean anything when we have to deal with state polls, electoral colleges, and actual swing states. Just because someone wins the national vote or the popular vote does not mean they're going to win the election. However, what's really nice right now is around this time you saw, at least in the national polls, that Hillary Clinton had around a 3 to 7 point lead based on when you were looking.
And she did win by 3%.
Correct.
General election.
So Biden is up 7 points from where Clinton was at this time back in 2016. So that's fantastic. But if you don't trust just national polls or the national polling average, we also have a really nifty tool from 538, which we'll link in the show notes, called their National Overview Model or their forecast model. This is like one of my favorite tools to play with lately. I love this thing. As opposed to just typical polling, they look at all the different polls and simulate this election 40,000 times based on historical data and different polling data to see who would win that election. As of right now, they give Joe Biden an 87% chance of winning to Trump's 13%.
Last time, I believe, famously, Trump had a 33% chance, a 1 in 3, basically.
Yes.
And Hillary had 66%. So still Biden doing much better.
And if I remember correctly, I saw this, I think, 85 to 15 like 2 days ago.
Yeah, it's not getting any better.
Yeah, so it's like moving even further to the edge for Biden.
I personally like looking at the snake graph they have of the electoral votes that you need. It gives you a visual representation of how important each state is. The larger the state, the more electoral votes they have, the larger that segment of the snake is. But you can see, too, because it shades the states that are more
currently leaning Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, the more Republican they are, the more red it is, the more Democrat they are, the more blue it is. And you can see that Trump has a much harder path. He has to change a lot of these close races in order to get to 270, whereas Biden could lose 4 or 5 of them and still be there. Makes Pennsylvania look really important because they're right on the line.
Right, exactly. So let's look at some of those states that we should be looking at. Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Now, the good news is, with a lot of those states, they've been starting to really lean blue. When 538 first started with this model, almost all those states were at least just barely blue or complete toss-ups. And now the vast majority of those are actually leaning blue, which is good.
So let's look at some individual state polling. I'll start with, we'll go in random order. I don't know. State with the best podcasts, maybe? Start with Wisconsin?
Let's do it.
All right. Currently in Wisconsin, Biden has a 7.2% lead, which is much higher than it has been.
I said that's actually gone up since we last checked.
Yeah, it kind of was sitting in the 5-6% range for a long time.
The Marquette Law poll that I had has him ahead by 5 points. So, and that's what, from like a week ago?
Yeah, and this is, I mean, some of these polls, you can look and see what the weight is, the grades that they give to each poll. So you can tell, like, the Survey Monkey ones, they give a D- rating because that's just anybody can take that. You don't know. They don't even have to be of voting age. They could be, 15-year-olds doing these polls. So you can kind of see which ones have higher rating and kind of judge for yourself. You can filter them out. It does a pretty good job of giving you some options. But I think the biggest thing here is the fact that the number of people that are saying that they're going to vote for Biden is actually over 50%.
Yes.
50.9%. A lot of what people say happened in the last election is that all of the undecided voters ended up breaking for Trump over Hillary Clinton.
And now the exact opposite's happening.
Yeah, you're starting to see that it's Trump's, he's at 43% on here and Biden's at over 50%. There's no undecideds there. There's no room to make up any ground. So even if every undecided voter broke for Trump, it wouldn't matter because Biden's still over 50%. So that's also a good indication.
So without getting too far ahead, it looks like Wisconsin is actually starting to settle pretty nicely for Biden, which makes me very happy. I don't know about you, but
yeah. And I mean, people still I've already voted.
It's same here.
So my vote is in Wisconsin. Absentee voting has already started today. Wednesday is the last day that you can register online or by mail to vote. So you can still register in person beyond today. In-person absentee voting or early voting begins on the 20th. You can check online for all the locations there. From what we're seeing in other states like Georgia, you're going to run into some long lines on the first day. You don't have to go on the first day. You can wait when, the lines aren't so big and still vote early, stay safe. Obviously the actual election's on the 3rd. Vote early if you can, but make sure you vote. That was the biggest issue with the last election.
Yep, in 2016.
If you want to get rid of Trump, you actually have to do that work. That is the bare minimum that you have to do is go out and vote in any way. Vote absentee, vote in person, vote the day of the election, whatever you need to do, just make sure your vote is counted.
A good way to visualize this, at least for our Wisconsin listeners, is during our April 7th primary and during the Supreme Court race with Jill Karofsky and Daniel Kelly received more votes than Trump did in 2016. The reason why Jill Karofsky won is because there was a much higher turnout for Democrats.
Historically, the higher the turnout, the better for Democrats.
Especially in Wisconsin.
That's why the Republican Party's entire platform is built on voter suppression. The less people vote, the better it is for Republicans because they have a built-in base of people that vote. And they know they're in the minority overall when you sample all of America. But they have fanatics that will always vote for Republicans. And we need that same fanaticism on the Democratic side or the liberal side or the progressive side.
Right. So let's look at some of the most or highest toss-up states then. How about let's do Ohio.
Ohio, which is consistently been flipping back and forth.
Correct.
Between Biden and Trump. Currently, 538 shows them as a 0.1% lead for Biden.
It is about as close to a toss-up as you can get.
And Ohio is worth a lot of electoral votes. You have a lot of big cities. They are 18 electoral votes.
Do you think John Kasich's endorsement of Biden helped that much?
It should have.
When was the DNC? Middle of August, right?
Yep.
If we're looking at the 538 polls, it really didn't do anything.
Biden was up by half a point
And kind of just,
and then went down by half a point. It's like I said, it's been flip-flopping quite a bit. If you look historically, Biden's been up by a couple points. He's been down by a couple points. Who knows? I think it's going to come down to turnout. If you get a high turnout in those bigger cities, those bigger urban environments, then I think Biden's going to win. If you get low turnout in those areas, he's going to lose.
and speaking of turnout, let's talk about another one that's become a toss-up, which is kind of crazy to even think about. How about Georgia?
Georgia currently, amazingly, has Biden ahead by 1.4.
That's even insane to think that Georgia's in play right now.
Yeah.
I am fascinated on. Now, Grant, again, this is about as close of a toss-up as you're going to get. I don't have high hopes for Georgia, but even 538 in their simulation says that Biden would at least win 51 out of 100 times. So at least it's a toss-up, which that's a win, right? Like, even if Georgia goes to Trump, I would still be absolutely amazed if we can have a close race in Georgia.
Especially with Georgia's Senate seat that is expected to be the one that Democrats lose to a Republican. If Georgia gets a big Democratic turnout to vote for Biden, they might be able to keep that seat, which would be pretty big.
Correct.
Now, what about the big surprise in all of this?
Texas.
The state that's actually close being Texas. That Biden is currently down 1.4, Trump is up. There's been times where he's been slightly up, but I mean, Texas, that's a Republican stronghold state. They need that state there. I don't think there's any way for Trump to win if he loses Texas. I think
no
it's
way.
over.
There's no way.
If we can change the demographics of Texas, the Republicans would actually have to do something in order to ever hope to hold major office again. They wouldn't be able to just rest on conservative, aka status quo. They would actually have to come up with some sort of platform and agenda if they want people to vote for them again, which is what should happen. So come on, Texans.
Give me your top 3 states that you think would actually be in play for us.
I think Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania are the 3 that, if those go Democrat, and I think they might, that
I'm always worried about Florida. Florida is such a dumpster fire.
and Florida is traditionally a swing state, but they are also traditionally Republican governor, and they've been recently more Republican. Kind of the general wisdom is the further north you get, the further like the South Florida is.
Yeah, the whole Turnpike area.
And the further south you get, then you get more northern transplants, and you have that large Cuban population. And so it's different than most states because there are so many transplants. But it has been widening for Biden recently.
Since October.
And it's currently at 4.5 points up. And again, if that holds, that's a big win. Trump can win without Florida, but it'd be very difficult.
I'm kind of curious to see Arizona be as close as it is.
Especially with their Senate seat, which we'll get to the big Senate races that are in there, and this certainly is one, but Mark Kelly's up big.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the other thing. It's where you have someone like Mark Kelly doing so well, but then support for Biden is kind of leveled out.
Currently on 538 shows Biden up 3.7 in Arizona, which is rather close. Honestly, if it weren't for 4 years ago, I think we would say, 3.7, that's not close. Biden's going to win. But because there was so much movement last time, and it's particularly in Wisconsin, Wisconsin's the state that
screwed everything up.
Yeah, that everyone got wrong and was like way off, like 6 points off. That kind of moved the margin of error up for everybody. And so now, 3.7 up, it doesn't seem like that much right now.
Well, and maybe that's a good way to segue into our next point here, which is how much weight do we give these polls? How much weight do we give the different simulations and models and just general statewide and national polls for this type of stuff? Because, you heard that pretty consistently afterwards where you can't trust polls. You can't trust polls. You can't trust anything Nate Silver tells you.
And I think it's a combination of the polling plus turnout. Because last time, they usually poll people that generally vote, and they give a higher weight to, they call likely voters. And I think last election, you had a lot of likely voters that either didn't vote or voted third party for some reason, that kind of skewed those results.
And actually, what I've also been seeing is a big difference that polls have been making for this election compared to last election is putting more weight behind the differences of education, where you had a lot of polls collecting information on college-educated voters that typically leaned more Hillary Clinton, but they didn't pay as much attention to non-college-educated voters. And typically, especially in Wisconsin, when you have a white non-college-educated voter, sorry, Jason, they're usually going to vote for Trump.
Yep.
And on top of that, what we should also focus on is the models that were done in 2016 weren't actually that far off. There was about a 3-point area of margin, which is what you just talked about, Jason. But beyond that, the issues came from state polls. That's where a lot of the swinging came from. As far as the modeling goes, a lot of national polls are pretty darn close. I know like 538's 2016 poll was like pretty on the spot, even though they all hated Nate Silver afterwards.
Yeah. So the whole thing came from Hillary had a 66% chance of winning. Trump had a 33% chance of winning according to his models, and Trump won. That's, I think, where most people were like, wait, I thought it was certain. The saying that you have a 66% chance of winning is not the same thing as saying she's going to get 66% of the vote.
Bingo. And that's where I think where a lot of people just fell through. It became kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Yeah, and now no one trusts any polling.
Which is good, to be completely honest. Like, that's okay. You should have healthy skepticism with these polls. And also, you should pay more attention to state polls as far as just a national average in polling as well. And what you can do with that is just, when you wake up tomorrow, assume that we are dead even. Assume that Biden and Trump could win any state and you have no idea who's going to win based on the polls. That's how you should still vote. That's how you should conduct yourself in the weeks leading up to the election. If you're thinking about volunteering and helping out the campaign, but you think, well, Biden's up by 10 points, imagine that it's 0. And imagine that they're tied neck and neck and they're not going to win without your support. That's how we end up winning and killing Trump in this election.
Yeah, and I think it is important, even in states where, like New York, California, where they clearly, one way or the other, even if you're in Mississippi, you still need to vote. The more votes come in, the less chance that Trump has of pulling any legal issues, saying, well, I'm ahead on election day, before we count any of the mail-in ballots, I'm going to declare that all mail-in ballots are fraudulent and declare victory, and now I've got this 6-member conservative Supreme Court to uphold anything that I need them to, and basically steal the election. The more votes we get in, the more chance that he's not going to be ahead on election day, and he's not going to be able to try something like that. Both parties are amassing a huge number of lawyers to try to fight any kind of dispute. And we already see what's likely to happen from Trump because of what he's been saying. Mail-in balloting is fraudulent. They're going to steal this election. There's no way I can lose fairly. And even saying, yeah, I would hope that the Supreme Court doesn't have to get involved, but if they do, I would think that they would be in my favor. He's been saying all of these things over the past couple weeks and even months. That's what could potentially happen. That's why we all need to vote. If you're going to vote in person because you're worried about mail-in ballots being thrown out, vote, make a plan. Pick a day, either early in-person voting or go the day of. Make sure you know where your ballot locations are and do it. Make sure you set aside the time. There's legal protections that, you can take time off of work if you need to, things like that, but actually come up with a concrete plan and stick to it.
So let's talk about each campaign's strategy, or at least what we think they should do. So which one do you want to start with first?
We can start with Trump. I'm already kind of in the Trump mindset right now.
So what are you going to do if you're Donald Trump to try to make up ground in all these states?
I'm going to push that Biden and Harris are crazy communists, that they're going to take your guns away, they're going to make your religion illegal, they're going to put 57 justices on the Supreme Court, they're all going to be communist immigrants from Guatemala, they're going to destroy the suburbs, they're going to murder your family in their sleep, and I'm the only one that can protect you. I'm Superman. I have the cure for COVID in my veins. I'm the Omega Man. Everyone come on to me, for I am Trump. That's my strategy if I'm Trump. Just keep pushing that fear-mongering Christian nationalism. The immigrants are going to come for you. They're going to take your guns. You're going to be in concentration camps.
See, what confuses me is I legitimately do not know. I mean, you're right. That is what he's going to do, and that will rally up his base. But I don't know how he's going to make up any of the voters that he lost. Where do you get those extra 10 points from? And I can't figure it out. I literally do not know, because everything that he does that he's good at is good at targeting that typical 33% of people that have been staying in his camp this entire time. What do you do for the rest of that percentage?
You try to get their votes thrown out.
I mean, actually, that's a really good idea.
You keep your base, and then you say that everybody else that's voting is illegal and they shouldn't be counted.
What states do you think he should focus on the most right now? I mean, there were some reports that came out saying that he pulled out a little bit from Wisconsin and Michigan.
Ohio, Florida, Texas is where he should be focusing.
Do you think he needs to push hard in Texas?
I think he needs to at least try. I mean, if he loses that, he has no chance. So he does need to at least keep that focus. Maybe he can lean on Ted Cruz and on the governor in Texas to do some of the work for him.
And they did, right? I mean, that's what Greg Abbott did.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. You see that they changed the law so that they can only have one ballot drop-off location per each county.
Which totally discriminates against high population areas.
Yeah, you've got Harris County, which has a population in the millions, Dallas, Fort Worth, and that is incredibly inconvenient for those areas. You're going to have huge lines of people standing there with their ballots in their hands waiting to drop them off, and that might turn them away. They might decide, it's not worth it, I'll do it later, forget about it, and that's what they want. That's the Republican strategy, to disenfranchise voters, to lower the turnout because it is in their favor. They don't want you to vote. They want the rural areas to vote because they traditionally vote in their favor, which doesn't make any sense either. They're voting against their best interests, but that's a topic for another day, I think. It's immoral, it's undemocratic, it's un-American, and it should be illegal, but it's the Republican strategy.
And you're 100% correct here. So you have the smallest counties, like Loving County in Texas, which have approximately 134 people, and they get one ballot drop box for the entire county, compared to Harris County, which is 4.7 million people. You want to guess what the political demographics of each one of those counties are? This is 100% voter suppression at its finest. I completely agree that while Trump can probably just stay on message, he's going to have to heavily rely on Republican politicians to suppress the vote as much as he can.
And the courts that he packed to throw out as many ballots as possible.
I just don't know if he needs to spend that much time in Texas. I mean, I think he should spend some time in Texas and some of his money in Texas, but he has too much ground to make up. I feel like he needs to focus on Florida, getting Florida back, because I think you can for him, because they're crazy enough down there to believe him. And I think he needs to get Pennsylvania.
He needs to secure Ohio for sure.
Yeah, I'd go with that too. I think it has to be at least those three he needs to focus hard on. I don't think Georgia is going to go blue, even though I would love if it did. I think North Carolina and Arizona are going to go blue, so I think we're okay there. But Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania are like must wins for both of them. And I think those are going to be the most important states right now for the Trump campaign.
And then if he loses Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, again, that's going to be a tough road.
Yeah, so what do you think the strategy of the Biden campaign should be?
If I'm the Biden campaign, I just keep hammering COVID as hard as I can. I think that's the one issue that is resonating with people.
I totally agree.
And that's what they should stick to. The congressional campaigns are where they need to kind of push the Supreme Court vote. And Biden can still use the Supreme Court vote, but still in that COVID context. They are not giving you a relief bill. Instead, they're doing this, but still just keep everything about COVID and just reminding people what a terrible job he did. The fact that restaurants are still not open. The fact that, people are still in danger. It's worse now than it was at the beginning of all of this. We're the only country outside of Brazil and India that have this huge continual increase. It's not a third. People are saying, well, this is the third wave. It never stopped.
No.
And just point that out. Like, this is your federal, because they still have no federal response. They're not doing anything. All Trump did is get sick, go to a socialist hospital to get better, and then claim victory afterwards and talk about the virus in the past tense. Right after he got it.
Did you see that he's now trying to say that, or his campaign's now trying to say that he's a better fit to be president because he now has personal experience with COVID?
Yeah, I've heard that. And again, like, ridiculous.
What a crazy way to spin that.
Biden managed to not catch it because he takes it seriously.
But Trump took one for the team, man.
Yeah. His actions that demonstrate poor leadership and inability to grasp the severity of the situation and a lack of understanding of science, that shows that he's better, that he's the one who should take the lead here. He's the canary in the coal mine. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's buying that, and polls are showing that they're not.
I agree. I think Biden needs to just stay the course, keep his head above the fray, don't make any crazy gaffes, don't do anything stupid, don't take any risks. Don't give Trump what he wants. Trump wants the chance to put you in front of a camera so he can show millions of people that he can bully you. Don't give him that. I don't care if he's in any other debates with Trump after the one that he had. I'm kind of surprised that he even accepted to it, moving that second debate to the third debate, because he has no need for it. This is Trump's chance to do something. Biden has nothing to gain from the debates anymore. People have their minds made up. Just stay the course, and I think you have a good chance of winning. Keep it as boring as possible. People are sick of what's going on. They don't want to talk about this anymore. So talk about COVID when you can, combine COVID and the economy when you do, and then talk about going back to normal, and then get people to vote.
Have the lawyers and everybody ready to fight come election day and beyond, because that's what you're going to need to do. That's probably where you're actually going to win the election, unfortunately.
So, and then before we wrap this up, let's talk about some of the important congressional races to look at for this upcoming November. So as of right now, 538 predicts that Democrats are slightly favored to win the U.S. Senate and clearly favored to win the U.S. House.
So let's start with Arizona, since we already mentioned Mark Kelly. This is a special election because this is actually John McCain's seat. The original person that it was given to retired, and then it was given to Martha McSally. So she's never actually been elected. So the winner of this seat can actually be sworn in the next time the Senate meets after the election, which should be November 30th. Currently, Mark Kelly leads by an average of 7.3%. He's a former astronaut and the husband of Gabby Giffords, who was a representative from Arizona who was shot in a mass shooting a couple years ago.
And this is also why we knew we couldn't trust Martha McSally for any actual help on the judicial nominee, because we knew that she was even losing back then, right? We already knew that her race is kind of reaching its end and that Kelly has a great chance of winning this race, which is amazing. I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, so that's going to be a seat that's almost certainly flipped from Republican to Democrat. There's one seat that is likely to go Democrat to Republican. That's in Georgia, where currently you have Jon Ossoff running against David Perdue. Projections show that Perdue currently has a 72% chance of winning. Although, again, turnout in Georgia looks like it's going to be very high, judging by the very long lines that they have for early voting. Maybe this is a situation where polling is going to be wrong in the Democrats' favor.
But it's all going to be done by turnout. And let's move to Maine, where we can see Susan Collins is losing for her seat against Sarah Gideon. Now, this one's actually a little bit interesting because Maine is doing ranked choice voting now, which is actually projected to give Sarah Gideon a better advantage. Collins has recently been in the news a lot because of her flip-flopping on various opinions. No one really trusted her, and she wouldn't hold opinions on anything, basically. I'm so happy to see that she's going to finally be gone. I'm hoping, but chances are looking that we're going to flip this seat too, which makes me very happy.
Yeah, instead of a centrist Republican who constantly
can't make up her mind.
Yeah, she sides with the Republicans on everything, but then talks about how much she's disappointed in the decisions that she helped create.
And for some a little bit more disappointing news, some of our favorite Republicans, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, are both heavily projected to win their Senate races. Graham is favored a 76% chance of winning his. McConnell is rated as a 96% chance to beat Amy McGrath, which, holy crap.
Did you see that debate?
The McGrath-McConnell one?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Oh, she was talking about how he did such a terrible job during coronavirus.
Didn't he like just laugh or
yeah,
something?
he was just laughing the whole time. And I mean, it's the most like Skeletor evil laugh you can think of too. While she's talking about how he's killed tens of thousands of Americans, refuses to do anything for them. They're all going to lose their jobs, their houses, and he's just chuckling. How would anybody vote for that?
I think a lot of it comes from the fact that I feel like if McGrath didn't win her primary and Charles Booker did, because he had such a big movement backing him at that point, he just entered it so late, there may have been a better chance. But McGrath has just lost all support from Democrats. No one cares. And you needed like everyone to support you in Kentucky if you were going to win, which is pretty sad. I'm hoping Jamie Harrison can beat Lindsey Graham, but we'll see.
There's another one where he killed Graham in the debate.
Oh, he destroyed Graham in the debate. He humiliated him.
That just goes to show that, people have already made up their minds by the time they get to the debates. But again, hopefully turnout, South Carolina can do something. We'll see. The other seats that Democrats are likely to pick up are Iowa, North Carolina, and Colorado, where you have Joni Ernst in Iowa losing to Teresa Greenfield. You have Cory Gardner in Colorado losing to John Hickenlooper. And you have Thom Tillis in North Carolina losing to Cal Cunningham currently.
I mean, and as of right now, Hickenlooper is destroying Cory Gardner.
Colorado is very strongly Democrat
so we can get that seat pretty locked up nicely. Thom Tillis and Joni Ernst's seat are currently toss-ups. I think actually Joni Ernst's seat is like almost like a direct 50-50 split. Pretty darn close. Teresa Greenfield is currently projected with a 53% chance of winning compared to Joni Ernst's 47.
Iowa's always kind of an odd
Right, I was going to say the same thing too. So we'll see what happens. That one's a toss-up. It's looking good for Democrats right now in the Senate, and it's looking even better for Democrats in the House.
Yeah, the Tillis race is not as close. It looks like Cal Cunningham currently is at 66% chance of victory. Again, I think that's going to come down to turnout in North Carolina. If North Carolina goes for Biden, then I think Cunningham wins. And that would give, if all those races continue out kind of how they are right now, that's going to give Democrats control of the Senate. They'll have a 51-49 advantage, that's razor thin. That you only need one person, one Democrat in a strong conservative area, which there are a few, to flop on a choice because their constituents don't agree with it. And there goes your health care. There goes your right to an abortion, things like that. So,
but I will say it's a much better chance than having Mitch McConnell run. Like, I would love to have Mitch McConnell not be the majority leader anymore.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get a chance to either continue with Chuck Schumer or hopefully again get somebody that's a little bit more progressive as the Senate majority leader if the Democrats do take over.
Correct. So all in all, what does this all show us? It shows us that it's looking pretty darn good for Democrats right now, which is great. However, that means nothing if you don't vote and if you don't help. So get involved, donate your time, donate your money, and help these Democrats win and help us take our country back.
Donate your sperm.
What, to make more Democrats, or what are we doing here?
I don't know. Just saying stuff you can donate. The Republicans are trying to take your voice away. They want you to feel like it doesn't matter if you vote or not.
I was just going to say, they want you to know your vote doesn't matter.
Yeah, all those people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, they don't really represent me. You're falling into that trap. That's what the Republicans want. You think it's better if you don't vote and then Donald Trump is president for 4 more years? Is that a better outcome than Donald Trump loses and we get someone that's at least closer to your views and then your political party is in charge and you can do things to try to move them more towards you? It's not a mystery why after Bernie Sanders, now we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and all of the recent House members that are more progressive, that are part of the Justice Democrats. That is a movement. And it's in the Democratic Party because that's going to be the easiest way to gain. Well, you talked about this in the, You're Doing Politics Wrong episode. You have to gain power.
Yep.
And you're going to do that most easily by influencing an existing member of this 2-party system we have.
Yep.
And I see the opening And on the Democratic side, Elizabeth Warren has moved left. Ed Markey has moved left.
Biden has moved left.
Yeah, we have these people here. Take part in this and show them who you are, that you do vote, and that they need to capitulate to you if they want to keep their power.
And also, let's be real here. If Biden wins and he doesn't have a useful Congress, nothing's going to get done anyway. So let's really make sure that not only do we show up and help out Biden, but we help out all of these other, or these Senate candidates and these other congressional candidates win their races as well.
And you may have local down ballot candidates that need your help as well. Personally, in my district, there's a House race that, I voted for the Democrat, of course, there. He doesn't have much of a chance, but maybe again, turnout, you never know. I'm in Waukesha County in Wisconsin, which is very heavy Republican. So all of the real local races are basically all unopposed by Republicans. But in your area, maybe you do have a local race that you're going to influence by voting. And those races, a couple dozen votes are usually the difference.
So all in all, the polls look good for us, but go vote.
Yeah, definitely. You saw, again, we talked about this, 2016, all the polls looked like they were in Hillary Clinton's favor. Turnout was low. 4 years of Donald Trump. Let's not make that same mistake again.
Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. We need an ending to this. We just do the whole fucking thing again. Up next in headlines, the New England Journal of Medicine editorial. Oh, wait. Let me just do this again. I knew that was bad from the middle of it. Up next. Stop laughing at me.
It's funny when you can't, it gets worse the more you try it.
I don't think you have that right. I was going to try to stop you, but you just kept going
Yeah.
and going and go. Hold on a second. I'm going
to cut that off, so it's fine. I can just keep saying crazy stuff because I have editorial control.
I have the power.
At least all the dum-dum states aren't worth any votes.
Waha.